Welcome to the second annual Sovereign Radio Show. I'm your host, Chango Unchained. I'm here with Scott Sunarto, who is the founder of Argus Labs, and we're going to learn about his gaming project. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. My name is Scott. I'm the founder and CEO of Argus Labs. We are a game publisher. I was focusing on fully on-chain games, and we're also building a roll-up framework called the World Engine that allows you to create a sharded roll-up that is specifically designed for fully on-chain games, giving you ability to horizontally scale your fully on-chain games to tens of thousands of concurrent players, and also having like low latencies for real-time combat interactions and so on and so forth. We're building on top of the modular stack. We build our own execution layer, which is the game shards, and we're also using Celestia as data availability layer to provide data availability for transaction data for all of our on-chain game transactions.
Awesome. So we're here at Modular Summit, and you're going to give a talk about your world engine and as well as reveal your game. So tell us about that. Are you excited?
Yeah, a lot of things to kind of like talk about here. We've been like working on a world engine for the past year. On December 2023, we launched the first game built on the world engine called Dark Frontier, where it's the first fully on-chain space MMORTS game built on top of the world engine. We ran it for a week. We had 700,000 transactions within that short span of the week, with players ranging from every continent all across the globe. And so that was like extremely exciting for us. And like now we've continued building with the world engine, and it's now available for every game developer to be building on. And like we're super excited to be unveiling all the innovations that we've been like hard at work at, and also showcasing those like new capabilities through our latest game called Block Survivor that we'll be launching during Modular Summit.
Is your background in gaming?
So I got into games in like a very interesting path. So I actually got into programming in general through video games, right? I used to be a big Minecraft player, and like by playing Minecraft, I ended up creating my own Minecraft mods and all of that, and basically kind of using Java to add new features to the game, etc. And that's how I got into programming as a rabbit hole. I've never really thought that I would be like in the game industry. I've always liked programming. I know I want to be a software engineer. Fast forward to like 2020, when I was in college, me and my friends co-created a game called Dark Forest, which ended up becoming the first fully on-chain game, and it become super popular and had many players Dylan Field, who's the CEO of Figma, playing it, and that's like how I got into this like very weird rabbit hole of video game development. And from that experience, I actually learned a lot about the hurdles that exist if you want to build a fully on-chain game. As you already know, blockchains were never really designed for fully on-chain games. It's started with Bitcoin, which are really thought about as cryptocurrencies for payments, etc. When Ethereum came about, gaming wasn't really thought about as like a use case as much as really thought about for maybe exchanges like DeFi and so on and so forth. So the moment when we created Dark Forest, where it's fully on chain, a lot of people were like, hey, are you seriously trying to run the game fully on chain? Are you sure the blockchain are able to handle it and all of that? And what we learned from there is actually the blockchain struggles when you actually try to run a fully on-chain game on top of it. And so from a lot of the learnings from building Dark Forest, I kind of decided to build the world engine to build a blockchain that is designed from the ground up for running fully on-chain games, right? Not for DeFi, not to be this be all end all blockchain for everything, but only to focus on serving gaming applications. And gaming is actually a very interesting vertical because game applications doesn't generalize as well as the other applications that you might see in the market. This is why if you're trying to build a new game, let's say not even a crypto game, you need a dedicated game engine, right? You don't need a dedicated engine for let's say an e-commerce website. You don't need a dedicated engine for let's say building B2B SaaS app, but people use game engines to build games because it's such a different form of applications. And blockchains, for example, in this case, also isn't compatible for running games on top of it. And so we actually had to redesign a blockchain from the bottom up to service the performance intensive requirements of a fully on-chain game. And so that's basically how I got into this very weird rabbit hole, a lot of experimentations, but I think that's kind of a very fun journey. And we're very excited, of course, to get more people like Nerd Snipe and build fully on-chain games.
Excellent. Well, you're definitely nerd sniping me right now. So there's there were many tweets that have gone viral showcasing an on-chain game, purely on-chain gameplay where, and the joke is that every time he tries to make a move, MetaMask pops up, MetaMask, right? And then it's just untenable. So tell me about the gameplay that you expect on August.
Yeah, funnily enough, when we were building fully on-chain games back in 2020, that was unironically the user experience. You have MetaMask pop-ups at basically every time you make any moves in the game, and that's what we had to deal with, right? But of course, we learned from that experience, and now we could have games that have real-time combat, you have people shooting each other, and again these fast-paced action games. And you could do that seamlessly to the point that it's indistinguishable from a Web 2 game. And so that has been our goal from the very beginning with the World Engine, is to make the, not only the user experience as seamless and as indistinguishable with Web 2 games, but also to make the developer experience indistinguishable from Web 2 games too. And even we want to make it even easier than what people would have been able to do with these Web 2 game server engine, right? And so and I think we have been able to reach that point. When we're building these games internally that we're about to launch, we actually realized that we were able to implement that game faster using the World Engine than if we were to use a traditional game server framework that is available out there. And those game server framework would cost us a lot of money if we were to use that. And for World Engine, we, with the spirit of open source of blockchain, made it available for everyone to use. And so I think there's a lot of really great strides that have been made to actually make fully on-chain games much more accessible, not only from the player's perspective, but also from the developer perspective, which I think is kind of somewhat of a chicken and egg problem.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a conflicting interests there, and so just to provide a little bit of context for the audience, your on-chain gaming worldview is sort of this maxi worldview of let's put everything on chain and let's I want that to be the goal, and let's figure out the design that's going to enable this. And that's very different from the worldview of many other Web3 game developers, where they say, okay, that's not tenable. We're just going to put, we're just going to use the blockchain for the NFT marketplace or gaming artifacts.
Yep.
So how did you implement the World Engine to enable fully on-chain games?
Yeah, so that's a very great question. So the answer here is really to, again, build a blockchain from the bottom up that has optimizations that allows the level of performance that you would expect from a game server, right? And so existing blockchains have 1 second, 2 second block time. Ethereum have 15-second block times. If you play a game and then you make a move and a response in 15 seconds, nobody would want to play that game. That's completely unplayable. So we had to build a really fast blockchain from scratch to be able to support sub 100 millisecond user interaction and that allows us to basically make all of this possible and scalable. And one non-obvious insight that we have from building these blockchain is that building a blockchain for one single purpose or one specific category actually allows us to achieve optimizations that like a general purpose blockchains are not able to do, which gives us superpowers and like ability for us to like be more performant than like our general purpose like like alternatives, right? And so that is like basically the key insights there. We are able to make data access optimizations that are like specifically designed towards like how a game would access their game state. And that gives us a lot of performance boosts that, again, like a general purpose blockchain, like, generic EVM chain wouldn't really be able to. And that is like a really kind of like one of the key secret sauce. And on top of that, we also have the sharding system, which allows us to horizontally scale a chain to have like multiple like rooms, so to speak. So like, you're playing, let's say a Dota 2, or you play like, some sort of like online game. It's very common for you to have like the concept of rooms where you divide up, the players into like different
like
servers.
Federated, so right,
Yes.
like a Fediverse.
Yeah, kind of like different regions, and like distribute the load essentially, right? And so that is extremely important for any consumer applications, because you want to make sure when your game became very popular and people want to play with their friends, you don't refuse like, people because like, oh, sorry, the blockchain is full, like we can't accept them, because that would like turn away all these players from playing these like fully on-chain games. And so that was like kind of basically the two things that we focus on in making that possible. The first one is just basically building a blockchain that is like high performance, optimized specifically for games. And two, innovating on like roll-up architecture by implementing execution sharding, which is like one of our key kind of like key main research topics within the company.
That's interesting.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Am I visualizing it correctly that you're able to seamlessly spin up sovereign rollups, or shards as you call it, as needed, and each rollup is basically a dedicated federated server, so to speak, for a dedicated instance of a game?
Yep. So like the way that you can use shards are like, again, like it's like a tool in the toolbox, right? So there's like very, very many different ways that you can use it. One of the examples here is like, for example, if you're playing a game like, let's say Counter-Strike, you can have like each match have like 10 players in the same room. And so you can use like each shard to like contain like, each of these like 10-player match, right? That's like one way of doing it. Another way of like, using shards, which I think is like, very, very interesting, is like when, let's say you have one really big giant world. So let's say you're playing a game
like an MMORPG.
Yeah, like an MMORPG,
like
right? World of Warcraft, like, Ultima Online, and so on and so forth. With those like kind of games, like what you can use, you can divide up the map into smaller chunks or smaller pieces, and like assign different chunks or different regions into different shards.
That's exactly how Ultima Online was built, right? That was how it was designed, in that if you're in a certain part of the world, you were almost geographically isolated from another part of the world who's playing a completely different instance of the game, and that's their federated server model. And interesting that you're using shards in the word shard in the exact way that it was the etymology started, right? Which is sharding in Ultima Online.
Yeah, that is correct. So like the term sharding is actually now used beyond gaming as well, right? It's like used like now with databases, even like Ethereum, like, it has the concept of sharding too and all of that. But funnily enough, it actually started from Ultima Online. So like, like a lot of our server architecture is, or like blockchain architecture is inspired by kind of some of the largest like, game, like, server architecture out there, right? So these like massively multiplayer online games like Ultima, World of Warcraft. So what we do here is basically take the learnings that we have from these like, large scale game server architectures and bring that into like a fully on-chain like context. And so like, this is like one of those examples where like, basically the magic of blockchain really meets the like, the bleeding edge of like really like, distributed systems engineering. And like by doing that, I think we have this like best of both worlds, where you have all the powers of like a fully on-chain games, like composability, interoperability with smart contracts, but you also have the scalability and also these like seamless user experience powered by the distributed systems, like, research and engineering that like, the game industry have done for, more than like, 2 decades now, right? And so like all of those collective learnings we kind of bring over into blockchain, so that we can finally we can finally bring this like, like very niche blockchain and Web3 game into like a state where it's now like professional. It's like, it's like actually like a real industry with like, really, really cool attempts and like, shots on goal for building novel games instead of just like, another like NFT collectibles, which is just getting pretty old.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think what's really cool about your project is that if it succeeds and you go to market with this product and your vision is fulfilled, it is the market validation for this modular stack. And this is, if it works, then we know that this is the architecture to go forward with to scale to the next billions of users, right? We're going mainstream now. So this is very interesting. I would love to hear about the application that you're building, the actual game that you're launching at Modular Summit.
Yep. So I think like one of our like mantra within the company is that we don't want to be a pick and shovel company, right? So like a lot of people are doing infra for the sake of infra, but we kind of see ourselves more as a gaming company. So we're building the technology, we're building World Engine as a means to an end for us to build better games. So as a part of our endeavor, again, we're building a World Engine, and like right now we're also like launching a new game built on top of the World Engine that showcases one of the key like unique benefits that you get with a World Engine, which is geolocalization, right? Like as you previously mentioned, like with like Ultima Online, you can have like servers that are closer to you, which gives you like lower latency, so you have a better user experience. These are something that previously, like this is not even a concept in like most classical blockchains, right? So if like a block producer or like or a roll-up sequencer is like based in the US and you're in Asia, your transactions are going to have to wait a long, long time before it gets processed. And like that means that every single game moves that you make will feel sluggish, right? Which is like not acceptable if you're trying to build a game, because like, our mind has this like, state of flow that they expect when you're playing a game. And when those state of flows are disrupted because of these like transaction waits, you lose the joy and the, like, these like constant rush of like energy that you gain from like, playing a game. And so one of the things that we do is like with sharding, you can like have multiple sequencers, you can have multiple block producers
anywhere in the world,
running on different regions across the world. And therefore you can have like low latency for anyone from anywhere of the globe, right? And so this allows you to access markets, you access players that otherwise wouldn't have been able to play the game, in a way that is like, interesting, or like, kind of like, well, I think that's like one of the things that I think I was like very frustrated by when I was like, I come from Indonesia, born and raised, and like if I want to play this new game that only has like a US server, then the game would be like close to unplayable for me, and I would just like leave the game very quickly. And so I want to make sure that's not something that we have to be stuck with like, blockchain games, with fully on-chain games. And so that's like one of the coolest thing that we're showcasing with this like latest launch. And so that's like kind of like a very exciting and kind of like milestone for us, and like a large milestone for the fully on-chain games community in general too. Because now there are more different kinds of games that we can do that previously we weren't able to do, right? Because like, without this like, geolocalization, then you can only do very, very slow paced games like, card games that, like really moving very slowly. You can't really have anything that has like real time combat. But now with geolocalization, you can have them, and you can actually check it out today, blocksurvivor.com. And so with that game, like, you can be anywhere in the world, and you will have like a shard that is close to you, giving you like low latency. And like, we actually have one running in like Germany right now, which like the Modular Summit is going to be using, which gives you like, less than 50 millisecond latency. So you're going to be like, very snappy as you play the game.
That's very exciting. Well, if you are as excited as I am about Scott's new project, then be sure to tune in to his talk at Modular Summit, and be sure to check out his game. I'm very excited to also test out your game. I'm a gamer myself, if you couldn't tell. And yeah, if you want to listen to a deeper dive about Argus Labs that we haven't covered yet, be sure to tune in to Entertain FM when we have Scott back on in the future.
All right.